Well, hi, and welcome to another episode on NetSupport Radio. I'm Al Kingsley, and I'm really pleased today to have a guest on the show talking about a topic that is close to many of our hearts. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much, Al. Thanks for asking me.
I always like to do a bit of an introduction and bio. I've had to abridge yours slightly, given all the different things that we could be covering. But the key bits are obviously, as it shows on the screen now, and if you're on the video channel, and if you're listening, Paul, you're CEO of the Learning Foundation and Digital Poverty Alliance, worked in the charity and NGO sector for just 35 years, so just getting started. And the last 20 years, closer focus on education, from setting up British Council for School Environments to leading a British education NGO in Vietnam for 7 years.
That was a great experience. That was not least because with education, sometimes it's very difficult to see the kind of return on investment, if you like, of time and energy, because it's quite lengthy. But so the time in Vietnam was wonderful, where you could, a child not in school, and you could find the money. I could come and beg you, Al, for $100 a year, and you see that child go to school, and then you can see them grow up. So it was a very enriching, rewarding experience, I have to say.
I can imagine. I mean, obviously, you've got a huge breadth there of experiences, which is great to pull together. One of the topics that's resonated probably more than ever the last couple of years, and why we're having this chat, Paul, is about digital poverty and aspirations to level the playing field. And obviously, that's at the heart of the Digital Poverty Alliance. For those listening who are perhaps new to the journey or perhaps want to get more of that definitive perspective, in terms of digital poverty, how can you best describe it? What would you say the term really represents?
Yeah, that's a great question to start with, and also just to say my perspective is not as an educationalist. You've said about me being involved in education off and on over the last 20 years, and that's absolutely true. But within the NGO sector, it's very much for me about that old adage about education is the way out of poverty. I absolutely believe that, and so I see my role very much about enabling other people to do that for different groups or whatever. And the same is absolutely true about the digital poverty side. I'm not clever around the whole piece around what piece of software might have what impact on what age group in what class. But what I can say is that I know enough about that to be able to encourage schools, for instance, to look at it. And to encourage other people to get involved and try to pick it up as a subject area. So the definition of digital poverty is absolutely critical in all of this, because depending on how you define it, depends on the number of people you might be referring to. So to give you a really quick example, if you're talking about people whose connectivity at home might be minimal, it might be a mobile phone, they might have a device, but they're sharing it with lots of people, not very much data. You might be talking about 1 or 2 million households, still a big number. But if you might be talking about instead about people maybe having a device and some connectivity, but not having the skills to use that in a way that actually could benefit them, then you could be talking about as many as 10 or 12 million people. So for the Digital Poverty Alliance, we describe it as the inability to interact with the online world fully when, where, and how an individual wants to. And each of those words, as you can imagine, being chosen after many discussions and things.
Thanks, Paul. And that's really important to kind of kick off the conversation. I think back wearing my education hat, responsible for Multi-Academy Trust, and digital poverty perhaps kind of came to the fore when we were thinking very much about the connectivity aspect, about how we were enabling our learners, and that contention where you've got one device amongst multiple students. But that broader context of actually the skills to actually utilize the technology is the bit that sometimes I feel gets missed. I'm also conscious that there was almost a discussion and narrative around digital poverty to meet a specific pandemic need that was amplified. And so I want to look forward in 2022, because clearly what we're talking about here is not a fixed or one-time issue that's now gone away. So do you see the digital divide leveling up?
Again, great question. I think when we started work on trying to raise awareness about the scale and urgency of the problem, which was actually back in 2017, very few people really got it. They could see the potential for an issue, but there was very little research around to to say much more about that. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody suddenly understood that just how important it was, and also the number of school children that were disconnected and things. So I think a natural part of that has been some levelling up already. Of course, if you said to me 2 years ago when we formally launched the Digital Access for All, or 3 years ago now, then I would have said, God, if 1.5 million children were to receive a device from the DFE, I wouldn't have said it would have been all the answer, but I would have said that would be a fantastic step forward. And of course, in 2021, they've done just that. The issue about that, though, is that that's just a start. We do see it as a very complicated jigsaw puzzle. And, as I say, if you've got a device, that's great. But if you haven't got the connectivity or the skills to use it, then that's only part of the solution. But so I do see that. But what I'm finding at the moment, I don't know whether you found this too, Al, but is that schools have gone back. COVID's still an issue, whether it's staff members not being able to attend school or kids being off. I got a letter last night from my kids' school saying they've got another 3 cases of COVID there. And that means they've got so many other things to contend with, and the new Ofsted rules and everything else coming in too, which means that much as they might want to take the opportunity that the COVID has brought around, particularly around technology, and begin to affect change. The reality is finding the time, finding the money, finding all of these things is just too tough. So there won't be as much levelling up as I'd like to see.
I think that's a really key observation, because I think when we talk more broadly about the effective role of digital technology in education, one of the concerns is, having had this period of the narrative being amplified, there's a natural persuasion with so many other pressures on the table in education, Paul, that people will slip back to the way we did things before. And of course, one of the challenges, which is why I think it's really interesting having this opportunity to chat with you, is on one hand, we're encouraging schools to embrace where technologies work well, and to weave that into the future delivery of education. But that potentially has the risk of broadening the divide if we don't also at the same time have that long-term plan for connectivity, accessibility of devices, and the skills mandate.
Yeah. Now, when I talked about the jigsaw, we do think that most of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are there or thereabouts. One of the things that's happened the last couple of years, it's been a very tactical response, hasn't it? People been sort of throwing devices at people and seeing what works, and and then maybe adapting that. And it's lots of people with big hearts in their local communities or national and stuff. But the reality has been it's often just one part of the jigsaw puzzle. So as you say, when we talk to schools about the Learning Foundation that I'm chief executive of has a much different approach to what we do with the school is to sit down with them and look at the use of technology from a strategic perspective. What problems do you want to solve, and which ones are tech able to help you to solve? And what we then do is engage parents, the senior leadership team, the teachers are then they often given a device early on so that they can get to test their skills and boost their skills and things. And then the very final bit of that maybe as much as 6 months or a year down the line, the child will get a device. But at that point, it's an integral part of the way that the learning is being delivered. And the school will have done what it needs to do to ensure that child has the same potential to engage at home as they do at school across the piece. That is very different, I agree, from what's currently happening, where the DFE might be handing out 100, 200 devices to schools and then a modicum of connectivity for those who are isolating, that kind of thing. But that is far from an integrated solution. And so I worry a bit, actually, that the DFE investment today is not going to translate into the sort of changes in education we want to see for these young people.
No, I would embrace that. And I think we always have to think in education. We often think in terms of political life cycles, election life cycles. And one of the challenges is, with all this great new technology in our schools, in 4 years' time, when it's due for refresh because the devices are worn, broken, need of repair, have we got a plan to replace it? Or are we actually going to enable learners with this technology now and then take it all away again when the funding's not there to continue it? So there are certainly plenty of issues on the table, which brings me rather nicely, given we've set the scene, for want of a better term, Paul. Tell us about the Digital Poverty Alliance and your plans for 2022. How does it fit into that problem?
Very well. If I could just double the number of working hours and stuff, I think you're probably the same. Then the job done. But we are going to be doing a bit of that, actually. the first year, 2021, was very much about setting up. We got this tremendous support from Currys at the beginning of the year, and also the Institution of Engineering and Technology, which is a kind of very 150-year-old now organisation that brings a great deal of weight and power and things with it. So that was essential for us. But that was it was actually effectively Christmas. It was like a Christmas present, somebody ringing you up and saying, we can help make all your dreams come true. Wow. And so you have to respond to that. And so a lot of last year was about setting up. A lot of it was about finding the right people to help us and understanding what the structure was and bringing that together. We've now done that. We've got the numbers of boards, got a fantastic delivery board, which is co-chaired by Jim Knight, Lord Knight, who people know, just such a fantastic chap. And by Ruby McGregor Smith, again, who's got a fantastic track record and has been really good. We have what's called a community board, and there are 25 partners on that. And the thinking behind that, by the way, Al, because this is also important around education, is that the same young people that DFE are interested in, effectively those people who are from families that are struggling financially, are actually pretty much exactly the same people that NHS is interested in, are pretty much the same people that the British Retail Consortium would be interested in, because they are employees, they're whatever, and so there are numbers of organisations who are looking at how to enable these people to either access their services or their products or whatever it might be. So what we did was to bring them all together. So we have social housing there, we have UK finance, we have specialist providers, we also have observers, and they always call themselves observers, from DFE, DWP, of course, really important, and from DCMS. And they come together at the moment once every couple of months, and they spend time looking at what they're doing, where the blocks are, where the struggles are. And so for me, Al, the 2022 is going to be about, we will be publishing our UK evidence review, first of all, a look across everything that exists already so that people can come to one place and find the information they want. And then really importantly, we'll be delivering what's called a national delivery plan. And for me, that means everything, because I get the big picture, that's important and things, but I see real people every day, and so I see this as some kind of urgency. And finally, Al, just wanted to mention, of course, our ambassador group, of which you're a member, and thank you so much for that. But that's been really important. People who are passionate about education and learning and about the use of technology in helping to deliver that. And so there's 45 of you, I think, at the moment across the country who are helping to spread the word. And couldn't thank you enough for that. Thank you.
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's one of the things that's really clear from all you've really shared there is about taking those separate silos and bringing it to a common place. And I think that's, like you say, the overlap, if we were to do a Venn diagram, it's so obvious that taking that opportunity to bring it together, you have to hope, can only help accelerate the pathway to actually making a difference, making an impact.
Especially when you've got, NHS, who are kind of quite a big machine, and they've got, they might be able to bring resource and time and effort to play, where other organisations that equally want to be engaged in this space but don't have that. So they might be able to sort of piggyback off each other. The reality is that the problem, by the way, you asked earlier on, was the problem doesn't go away on its own. The research that we've done would indicate that if it's not done, it doesn't take care of itself. You won't naturally get a TV. And the issue is not about the device, because there's plenty of them around. The device, the issue is around connectivity, and that's a cost, isn't it? And it's not a cost just once a month; it's a cost forever. Unless you want to, as we've heard stories about school children sitting outside McDonald's or Costa Coffee or somewhere just because that's the only place where they can get connectivity.
Absolutely. And it's also about simplifying some of this narrative to the nuts and bolts of it.
Yes.
I'm very fortunate. I have a role in my region in the east of England chairing our Employment and Skills Board. And we talk about how we're creating jobs opportunity and skills for the future. And frankly, that's all a moot point if we don't give our future workforce the ability and the skills to actually access those job opportunities and the training and the resources, many of which are being provided and funded centrally by the government. But if they're not accessible, to what end? So I think this is such a critical conversation right now.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's it. Even though I'm very much on this kind of individual school child and parents and families level, much as you would be within your role at Monty Academy Trust, you also do have this big picture. And it seems so obvious to me that if we want to be a nation that's digitally enabled, if we are everything going online, we have really good meetings at the moment now with organisations like Government Digital Services, and I'm really pleased, Al, but people like Cabinet Office or organisations like Cabinet Office are now interested, because it is that. It's not just about individuals having the ability to do what everybody else can, whether that's watching movies, for instance, which I absolutely agree with, as much as it is about learning about who you are and everything else. It is about being a productive, able staff employee as you progress into work. And now that the opportunities for work often now require technical skills, which lots of young people don't have, as you say.
Absolutely. It's always about equal opportunities for everybody. Now the last question I have on my list for you, which is probably quite a big question because there's quite a few different pathways there.
Yeah.
It's all about, with this work and effort and the visibility and bringing those voices together, what can schools, government, edtech providers, companies, what can others do to help?
Yeah. Well, it's a big question, and I'm not, have to say, if I'm talking on behalf of Digital Poverty Alliance, in a place where I can say this is what you need to do. That's absolutely where we want to get to. We are in what we call a sort of listening mode at the moment. The UK Evidence Review will have numbers of recommendations in it, and we will translate those into actions. But as an overall answer to that question, what we would say is we see very much the engagement with digital happening at a very local community level. So I could see, for instance, an example, we talked to one of the big health trusts just a week or so ago. They're very clear that as patients come into the hospital services, that if they could say to them, you could have access to this service online, and by the way, this is where you can get a tablet, and this is where you can get some skills, and we'll help to do that because Birmingham City Council are now committed. That kind of that all of that kind of input is going to build, because for many people it's not just a matter of cost. Cost is certainly absolutely critical, and so there are things that government could do. We talk about, for instance, stopping VAT, but equally organisations like Currys and others are talking about the idea of people being able to trade in their old laptop, and that laptop then being refurbished and pushed back out to society. But the problem is not going to go away. And as I say to DFE2, for instance, that even if every single young person had a device right now, and well that they don't, then the reality is that what happens next September when another 600,000 or 700,000 young people arrive at school. So everybody's got a part to play. What we're hoping to do is to be able to provide a kind of a route map, I think is one of the a route map for that, which will talk about things like language. Motivation's a big issue for people. It's not really for me. And that's often because the language, it tends to be around digital and all this kind of stuff rather than about what digital can do. So there are numbers of aspects to this, behavioural science and things, and we're aiming to bring that all together and in a way that people can take from it whatever they suits their purposes best, really.
Absolutely, that's really, really helpful. And again, hopefully we've got people listening and they're interested in continuing the narrative and at the appropriate time joining the conversation. Super. Where can people find out more, Paul, in terms of connecting with the Digital Poverty Alliance?
Well, please say we have a website which is www.digitalpovertyalliance.org. That is also connecting with a platform that we've just building, and actually is kind of available now. And there is loads of things on there. There are not just groups you can join. If you're a teacher, for instance, you might join one of the groups that's about teaching, where you will be amongst similar teachers who can share ideas about what's worked for them, where their struggles might be. You can join. You can get a copy of a newsletter once a month or once a quarter, or take it further. And if you want to take it further, as you did, El, then we'd be delighted to hear from you. And the thing will be for us is to try to find the best way of using the skills and talent that people are currently offering us.
Fantastic. Listen, I really appreciate you taking time out to share. I know you're a busy man, spreading the word on all channels. So thank you for joining, and huge respect. I think it's such an important topic. We need to keep making sure it's out there.
I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I look forward to seeing it at BET as well.
Indeed, sir. I look forward to that too.
Okay, great. Thanks.